close your eyes and let us travel back in time. More than 450 years ago, the air is filled with the sound of marching footsteps, the clash of swords, and the beating of royal drums. This is the beginning of the story of Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, the boy who would grow into one of India's greatest emperors. Akbar was born in the year 1542 in a small fortress in Sindh. His father Humayun was the Mughal emperor at the time, but the Mughal dynasty was struggling. Enemies surrounded them, and their throne was uncertain. Akbar's childhood was not spent in comfort, but in exile, on the move, facing dangers at every step. When Akbar was just 13 years old, destiny called him. His father Humayun passed away suddenly, and the young boy was declared emperor. Imagine a child sitting on the throne of an empire, too young to even understand the weight of a crown. But with him stood his guardian and mentor, Bayram Khan, a wise and loyal general who guided him through the first years of his reign. Under Bayram Khan's protection, Akbar learned the art of warfare. He grew up not in classrooms, but in the open fields of battle. The clash of swords was his teacher, the neighing of horses his lullaby, and the endless sky his roof. Akbar did not learn to read and write in his youth, but he learned to lead men, to fight with courage, and to dream of uniting a land divided by kingdoms. As the years passed, young Akbar began to show the strength of a true emperor. At the age of 14, he fought in the Battle of Panipat, securing his throne against rivals. His bravery, his fearlessness on horseback, and his sharp decisions won him the loyalty of his soldiers. But Akbar was more than just a warrior. Deep within, he carried a vision of a united Hindustan, where kingdoms would not fight endlessly, but come together under one empire. His heart was restless, seeking not only power, but purpose. And so, the boy who had once wandered homeless, now stood as the rising sun of the Mughal dynasty, strong, determined, and ready to shape history. This is where our journey begins, with a young emperor, unaware that his path would soon cross with a Rajput princess, and together they would write a love story that would echo through centuries. Far away from the Mughal palaces of Agra, in the rugged lands of Rajputana, there stood the kingdom of Amber, today's Jaipur. The air here was different. Instead of the sound of royal drums, you could hear the temple bells ringing softly at dawn, the chants of priests, and the brave songs of warriors. It was in this land, surrounded by pink sandstone palaces and hills, that a little princess grew up, Jodha. From the very beginning, Jodha was unlike any ordinary princess. She was graceful, intelligent, and deeply rooted in her traditions. As a child, she spent her mornings in temples, offering prayers to her gods, and her evenings listening to stories of courage and honor told by her elders. Amber was a proud Rajput kingdom. Its walls echoed with tales of sacrifice and bravery. The Rajputs lived by a simple code: honor above everything. And in this proud land, Jodha inherited the spirit of both devotion and strength. Her palace was a marvel of Rajput architecture. Imagine grand courtyards decorated with marble fountains, delicate mirror work that sparkled like stars, and gardens blooming with roses and jasmines. The desert winds would blow gently through the palace windows, carrying with them the fragrance of sandalwood and incense. Jodha was not only beautiful, but also skilled. She was trained in music, in poetry, and even in the use of weapons. She could play the sitar with the grace of a saint, and also lift a sword with the courage of a warrior. But more than anything, she carried in her heart a deep faith in her gods, in her culture, and in the dignity of her people. Her father, Raja Barmel of Amber, was a wise ruler who knew that the times were changing. The Mughal Empire was growing stronger under young Akbar and the Rajputs. Amber stood at a crossroads between resistance and alliance. But little did Jodha know that soon her life was going to take a turn that would change not only her destiny, but also the destiny of an empire. In the quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Aravalli hills and painted the skies with shades of orange and pink, Jodha would sit by her palace balcony, humming devotional songs, gazing at the stars. She never imagined that one day those stars would carry her far away from the land of Amber into the grand Mughal palaces of Agra. She was a princess of Rajputana, but fate was preparing her to be the queen of an empire. And so, the story moves forward. The stage is set for a union, not just of two people, but of two worlds, the Rajput princess and the Mughal emperor. Soon, their paths will cross. The winds of history were changing. In the heart of India, the Mughal Empire under young Akbar was expanding quickly. But Akbar was not just a warrior, he was also a strategist. He knew that swords could win battles, but to rule hearts, he needed alliances. At the same time, in the desert kingdom of Amber, Raja Barmal faced a dilemma. The Rajput kings were brave and loyal to their traditions, but they were not united. One by one, kingdoms were falling under Mughal power. Raja Barmal wanted to protect his people, to safeguard Amber without unnecessary bloodshed. It was during this turbulent time that a decision was made. A decision that would forever change the lives of two people. Raja Barmal agreed to offer his beloved daughter, Princess Jodha, in marriage to Emperor Akbar. For the mules, this was more than just a royal wedding. It was a symbol of unity, a bridge between two mighty cultures, the mules and the Rajputs. But for Jodha, it was not so simple. Imagine her feelings. A young Rajput princess, devoted to her gods, tied deeply to her traditions, was now to marry a Mughal emperor, whose empire followed a different faith, a different way of life. In the quiet of her palace chambers, Jodha prayed to her gods, asking for strength. She did not choose this path, but destiny had chosen it for her. And yet, Jodha was not weak. She carried herself with dignity, her heart filled with pride for her people. She knew this marriage was not just about her. It was about the safety of Amber, the survival of her kingdom, and perhaps the weaving of a new future. The wedding was grand, unlike anything Rajputana had ever seen. The roads of Amber were decorated with flowers, torches lit the night sky, and music echoed across the hills. Rajput soldiers, in their bright saffron turbans, stood tall, while Mughal guards, in their fine silk uniforms, marched with pride. In the middle of this royal spectacle, Jodha walked slowly, her face covered with a veil of pearls, her heart steady but uncertain. Akbar, the young emperor, awaited her with regal grace. For him too, this marriage was not just duty, but the beginning of something he could not yet understand. And so, under the watchful eyes of gods and men, Jodha, by the proud princess of Amber, became the queen of the Mughal Empire. But this was only the beginning. For while the marriage united two kingdoms, it also began a journey of hearts, a journey of trust, of struggles, and of love that would slowly bloom amidst palaces of stone and walls of tradition. The political marriage was complete, but the true story of Jodha and Akbar was only about to begin. The marriage was over, but for Jodha, her true journey had only just begun. From the deserts of Amber, she now entered the grand Mughal city of Agra. The palace was vast, with marble walls that glowed in the sunlight, fountains that sparkled like diamonds, and endless courtyards filled with Mughal soldiers, nobles, and maids. Everything was majestic, but everything was unfamiliar. For Jodha, it felt like stepping into another world. Here, the language was different, the clothes were different. Even the prayers that echoed through the palace halls were not the ones she had grown up with. The chants of her temple bells were replaced by the calls of the Aznan. She carried with her a small idol of her beloved Krishna close to her heart. Every night, alone in the Mughal palace, she found comfort only in her faith. Life was not easy. Many in the Mughal court looked at her with suspicion. Some whispered that a Rajput princess could never truly belong in the Mughal Empire. Even among the queens of Akbar's harem, there were jealous eyes and cold smiles. Jodha was treated as an outsider, and Akbar, though he respected the alliance, he was still an emperor, distant, commanding, and surrounded by politics. Jodha was his queen, but their hearts were yet strangers. He could not understand her silence, and she could not trust his world. But Jodha was no ordinary woman. She did not let sorrow break her spirit. She stood tall with her Rajput pride, refusing to bend or lose her dignity. She insisted on keeping her traditions alive, even within the Mughal palace. She prayed to her gods openly, and Akbar, though puzzled, began to notice her strength. There were moments of quiet struggle, when the desert winds reminded her of Amber, when she longed for her family, when she sat by her palace window, gazing at the Yamuna River, her eyes filled with unspoken tears, yet deep within, fate was working silently. These struggles, this distance, these differences, they were slowly weaving a bond between two souls. Because sometimes, love does not begin with smiles. It begins with silence, with distance, with struggle. And in the grand palaces of Agra, the story of Jodha and Akbar was slowly preparing for its next chapter, where hearts would begin to speak. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Jodha, once a stranger in the Mughal palace, was slowly becoming a presence no one could ignore. Akbar watched her closely. At first, she was just a symbol of an alliance, a queen from a Rajput clan. But soon he began to see something more: her courage, her dignity, her quiet strength. Unlike others, Jodha never flattered him, never bowed unnecessarily, never tried to please him for power. Instead, she stood firm with honesty in her eyes. She was unafraid to speak her mind, even to an emperor. This was new to Akbar, and strangely refreshing. There were small moments, simple, ordinary, that began to weave their bond. One evening in the palace gardens, Akbar found Jodha playing her sitar. The soft notes floated in the air like whispers of peace. For the first time, Akbar did not feel like an emperor. He felt like a man, listening to music that touched his heart. Another time, when Akbar fell ill after a battle campaign, it was Jodha who prepared medicines with her own hands. She sat by his side, silent but caring, her presence stronger than 1,000 words. And slowly, Akbar began to change. The man who once saw religion as a barrier began to open his heart to Jodha's devotion. He respected her temple within the palace, even ensuring that no one disturbed her prayers. In return, Jodha began to see that Akbar was not the cruel conqueror she had feared, but a man willing to learn, to listen, to love. The people of Agra also noticed the change. The emperor, who once ruled with only power, now ruled with compassion, and many whispered that it was because of his Rajput queen. Love did not come suddenly. It was not in a single glance or a single moment. It was in the little things, the respect in their arguments, the silence in their walks, the care in their eyes. Jodha and Akbar, once strangers from two different worlds, were now walking slowly towards each other, step by step, heart by heart. And though neither of them spoke it aloud, the walls of the grand Mughal palace had already begun to echo with the unspoken truth that love was quietly blooming. Every love story has its trials, and so did Jodha and Akbar's. Their bond was growing stronger, but not everyone in the Mughal court was pleased. The idea of a Hindu queen in the Mughal harem was difficult for many to accept. Whispers ran through the corridors. How can an emperor share his throne with a Rajputani? How can he bend his rules for her? Some nobles saw Jodha as a threat. They feared that her influence might weaken the emperor's authority. Jealous queens within the harem tried to turn Akbar against her. Small insults, sharp words, and subtle schemes surrounded Jodha each day, and beyond the palace walls, the question of religion loomed like a shadow. Akbar was a Muslim ruler. His empire stretched wide and included many faiths. But to honor Jodha, he allowed her to worship Krishna, to keep her traditions alive. This decision shocked many Orthodox courtiers. They accused him of betraying his faith. Tensions rose. Some priests declared that no emperor should tolerate idols in his palace. The Rajput clans, too, watched carefully, wondering if Jodha had lost her identity in the Mughal world. For Jodha, it felt like walking a thin rope between her duty as a Rajput daughter and her role as the Mughal queen. There were moments when their love was tested. One evening, a heated argument arose between Akbar and Jodha. She insisted on the freedom to practice her religion without interference. Akbar, proud and burdened by the weight of his empire, struggled to balance his love for her with his responsibilities as an emperor. Their words clashed like swords, their silence heavier than stone. But in these struggles, something extraordinary began to grow. Akbar realized that ruling an empire was not just about power, it was about understanding. He began to see that unity could not be built through force, but through respect. Jodha, in her quiet yet firm way, became the mirror that reflected this truth to him. This was the birth of something greater. Akbar's vision of Sulakal, peace with all religions, a vision that would make him not just a conqueror, but a true emperor of hearts. But the journey was not easy. Court politics, jealous rivals, and the weight of two different worlds pressed heavily on them. Every day was a test, and yet, in the silence of their chambers, when the world outside raged, Jodha and Akbar would find strength in each other's presence. Their love was not a fairy tale. It was forged in fire, tested by shadows, and tempered with patience. The challenges tried to break them, but instead they made their bond unshakable. After storms comes calm. After trials comes understanding. And for Jodha and Akbar, this was the moment when their hearts truly began to open. The misunderstandings and arguments had tested their patience, but they had also revealed something deeper: respect. Akbar admired Jodha's strength, her honesty, her refusal to bow before injustice. And Jodha slowly began to see Akbar not just as an emperor, but as a man who carried the weight of millions on his shoulders. One quiet evening, in the royal gardens of Fettifur Sikri, Akbar invited Jodha for a walk. The moonlight shimmered over the marble fountains, and the fragrance of jasmine filled the air. There, with no courtiers, no politics, and no crown, Akbar spoke softly. "Jodha Begum, you are not just my queen, you are my friend. In your presence, I find peace that I find nowhere else." For Jodha, these words touched her soul. For the first time, she saw his vulnerability, the man behind the emperor's mask, and slowly, her walls began to fall. Their bond deepened in small, tender ways. Akbar would often listen as Jodha sang bhajans in her temple, the sound calming his restless mind. In return, Jodha would sit with him during long evenings, listening to tales of his battles and burdens, to different worlds. Yet their hearts were learning the same language. The empire, too, began to notice. Akbar's decisions grew more compassionate, more just. People whispered that it was Jada's influence, her gentle wisdom, that was guiding him. She was no longer just a queen. She was becoming the heart of the Mughal throne. One night, during a festival, the palace glittered with lamps. Jodha stood by the balcony, watching the flames dance like stars. Akbar joined her, and for a long moment, they stood in silence. Then Akbar said softly, "You have given light to my world, Jodha, just like these lamps." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no distance, no doubt, only trust. That night, without grand declarations, without promises, their love finally bloomed. It was not the love of passion alone. It was the love of companionship, of respect, of two souls finding harmony in each other. And from this moment forward, Jodha was not just a part of Akbar's palace. She was a part of his soul. The Rajput princess and the Mughal emperor. Two different worlds, united in one bond. As the bond between Jodha and Akbar blossomed, so did their vision for the empire. Their love was not only personal, it became the foundation of something greater. A new India. Akbar, inspired by Jada's wisdom and compassion, began to reshape the Mughal court. For the first time, the voices of Hindus, Muslims, Jains, and Christians were welcomed in the same hall. Fettifur Sikri became more than a palace. It became a symbol of unity. He invited scholars from across religions to sit together in the Ibadat Khana, the house of worship. There, they discussed philosophy, spirituality, and the meaning of peace. Akbar believed that no one faith had the full truth, and Jodha's presence in his life strengthened this belief. Jodha herself played a quiet but powerful role. She reminded Akbar of the common people, their struggles, their dreams. Whenever Akbar prepared new policies, he often turned to Jodha, listening to her perspective. And so, taxes on farmers were eased, local traditions were respected, and women were given more dignity in society. One of their most beautiful legacies was Fettifur Sikri. The city rose from red sandstone, with palaces, gardens, and grand courtyards. In its very design, it carried the blend of Rajput and Mughal architecture, a living reflection of their union. The Panch Mahal stood tall like a dream. The Dawanikas whispered of grand discussions, and the Buland Darwaza declared to the world the strength of an emperor who ruled with tolerance. But beyond the stone and mortar, their true legacy was of hearts. Akbar's empire became known not for cruelty, but for justice. His people, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Jain, began to see him not only as their ruler, but as a guardian of all. And in every corner of the land, the story spread that the Rajput queen Jodha had touched the heart of the great Akbar. and through that love had changed the destiny of Hindustan. Their love was not just of two souls. It was a bridge between two cultures. It was the seed of a vision where diversity was not a weakness, but a strength. Even today, when we look at the walls of Fatehpur Sikri or hear the tales of Akbar the Great, we find Jodha's silent presence there, in every stone, in every whisper of history. Their story became more than romance. It became a legacy of unity, of respect, of a dream for India that echoed far beyond their lifetime. In the end, all stories fade into silence, but some stories leave echoes that never die. The love of Jodha and Akbar was one such story. As years passed, their bond only grew stronger. Together, they saw victories, challenges, betrayals, and joys. Yet, through every storm, they stood side by side, emperor and queen, but also husband and wife, companions and soulmates. When the world spoke of Akbar, they called him Akbar the Great. But those who knew his heart knew that his greatness was not only in battles or palaces, but in the gentle influence of Jodha. She had given him patience when anger ruled him. She had given him compassion when power tempted him. She had given him humanity when the throne demanded cruelty. And when the world spoke of Jodha, they remembered her not just as a Rajput princess, but as the woman who brought warmth into the Mughal palace, the queen who carried her culture with pride, and yet embraced love beyond boundaries. Time, as always, moved on. Empires rise, and empires fall. The red stones of Fatehpur Sikri whisper of forgotten days. The marble palaces hold the footsteps of shadows long gone, but their story still breathes. In books, in songs, in legends passed from one generation to the next. Perhaps this is the true power of love, that even when people are gone, love continues to live in memory, in history, in the hearts of those who believe in it. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the quiet corridors of Fatehpur Sikri, the soft echo of Jodha's anklets, the deep voice of Akbar speaking in the silence, and the two of them walking hand in hand under the moonlight. Their story has no true ending, because love, like theirs, is everlasting. And so, as we drift into dreams, let us carry with us the whisper of their legacy, that love, respect, and unity are stronger than any crown or throne. This was the story of Jodha and Akbar, a story not just of an emperor and a queen, but of two souls who found eternity in each other.